COVID is rising. California is falling. Twitter is now going to censor anything they consider misinformation about vaccinations. And the restaurant ban continues for outdoor dining, but how long are people going to take it? Is the cure worse than the virus? That's been the eternal question on Rob Nelson Live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday night Rob Nelson live stream show. Interactive, streaming to you. We were having some problems on Reddit, but I think we're good. Streaming on Reddit, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, everywhere. And your interaction makes the show really fun, right? When I have a guest, interaction is less important. But this is all about me and you guys. So let's get right into it. It's another day in pandemic hell, right? And almost no matter where you live, right? Let me back up. Today is actually 1944. Today was the day the Battle of the Bulge began in World War II. The Germans surprise attacked the Allied forces in the Ardennes Forest, came at them, and boom, huge battle ensued. Personal to me because my dad was in the Battle of the Bulge in the infantry, second lieutenant, out there fighting day after day in the cold, in the snow. The Allies ultimately won that battle and obviously won the war. Yeah, World War II, if you're not a history buff, it's like whatever, the battles, the this. But it has significance, not just in that that was the greatest generation, supposedly. You know, why were they the greatest generation? I mean, obviously they were flawed in so many ways, but when you think about it, you know, I'm going to look at my dad's life. Like, he was born in the Depression, you know, lived like, you know, was working at 15, like full time, joined the military, served, went afterward, volunteered, served in a horrific, brutal, violent war. You know, war then was all about bodies, right? I mean, war in the future is going to be less and less about human beings, right? We can fight war from drones. I was talking to an admiral, active admiral, a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying the military's focused almost completely on non-human interaction. I mean, their whole focus is moving towards, one, we know most of a war can be fought without putting troops on the ground, and you know, we can do so much remotely. But beyond that, the battlefield of the future is a sort of a technology and a cyber battle, right? It's all about infiltrating information systems. You could infiltrate, you know, power grids. I mean, but the whole idea that we are no longer fighting wars where we're going to put massive, certainly the advanced, developed countries like the United States, where we put massive amounts of troops anywhere. We're pulling troops out, right? You can argue whether you like Trump pulling troops out or not pulling troops out, but it's the reality, right? Is like we're drawing down forces all over the world, and the future is going to have far fewer forces. But back in the day, back in World War II, it was all about forces. I mean, you had to literally throw tens of thousands of bodies to take over a space, to control the landmass. You know, air cover could come in to try to help you, but at the end of the day, you know, it was the bodies that occupied the territory that made it happen. And my dad was one of those bodies. And if any of you have watched my show, I've told you the story about my dad losing his whole platoon in one night. I mean, they went out there not sure pretty much every day if they were going to live. It's not like a police officer goes to work and you wonder, am I going to get shot? Which is something you'd obviously, as a cop in today's world, you wonder, right? Do I come home tonight? I mean, these guys were like, you honestly had to either not think about it or just accept the fact that you very well, thanks, Roca Boy 26 for following. Appreciate that. Appreciate all you guys who follow and share and interact. You had to really kind of almost accept you might not come. I mean, it wasn't like, I hope I come home. Like the odds were high that half of you wouldn't come home. I mean, again, if you watch any of the movies, you know, if you watch any of the real footage, you know, of any major invasions, like, again, I always use D-Day because you literally see how many people never made it to the shore. Like, you just, you know, so many people in the infantry just knew they weren't going to live. And you face that every day. And yet my dad wrote these letters home to his first wife, his childhood sweetheart at the time, who was his first wife, and she died before I was born. Obviously, my mother is my dad's second wife. And they were these like love letters. And you would think he was like on vacation in like cold weather. I'm not kidding. I'll pick that up. Night by Elie Wiesel. Yeah. Let me talk about that in 1 second. The Elie Wiesel book. It's an incredible book. Night. Let me just finish this thought here. So he literally wrote these letters home, and I read them after his death, and like you would think, I'm not kidding, that he was on vacation. He was like, oh, honey, it's cold here. We're making do, doing the best we can. Wish you were with me. Would love to cuddle up with you, do little pictures. I'm like, geez, they literally weren't sure they were going to wake up the next morning. And they were just being shot at 24/7. He lost his whole platoon in one night. Was he scared? Of course, they were all scared. But they had a sort of a different mentality. It's like they weren't a fear. They were a generation that had grown up with so much adversity in so many ways. Like fear was relative, right? It was like, it's what you did. It's what you dealt with. And then you went on with life. Let me shift gears for a second to the Elie Wiesel book, Night. If you haven't read it, it's a brilliant book. Elie Wiesel wrote this book. He was in a concentration camp when he was, I think, like 15. And basically, night is what happens at night when they would see the smoke coming out of the human, they were literally burning everyone and, incarcerating them all. And the smoke coming up out of it. He lost most of his family. I think he lost both his parents. I mean, he lost so many people in the concentration camp, and he survived. And he wrote Night about it and became an incredible spokesman about the Holocaust and about what happened and what happened to the Jews during the Holocaust. And a bigger level, what happened in a society that let that happen. That let Hitler and Nazi Germany turn on them, right? Because a lot, before that all happened, the Jews were an integral part of German society, and Hitler made them scapegoats. And over time, people went after them, and that whole idea, like, you're good, you're next. I don't want to push the point too far, but it's something I worry about with cancel culture, which is the whole idea that, like, not comparing cancel culture to the Holocaust. I'm simply saying the idea that, like, if you let something, if you're just willing to, like, let everybody else get thrown under the bus because it's convenient, sooner or later you get thrown under the bus too. That's what that was the whole idea of what would have happened ultimately had Hitler won. And what happened to the Jews. And again, if you don't know, if you haven't gone to one of the Holocaust museums, I mean, I think we forget. We forget how brutal things were. Living in the pandemic age, in the social media era we're in right now, as bad as COVID is, and it's bad, I mean, look at what people before us dealt with and faced. Whether you're looking at the Jews and the Holocaust, or you're looking at World War II and the soldiers, I mean, literally and that's just one small example in relatively modern history. When you look at what people faced and what they dealt with, I mean, if you read Night, to see the kind of courage that Elie Wiesel had as a kid, and even as an adult, to keep talking about this, to keep pushing for people to realize this can happen again. We can, and I know a lot of people think, yeah, Trump was going to make this happen. Trump was not a fascist. Trump was never going to, I'm not defending the guy. I'm just saying he never was going to have that kind of control. People say he's going to use the Insurrection Act. He's not going to use the Insurrection Act. And if he does, the Insurrection Act, meaning I'm not going to leave office, I'm going to let the military declare me president, he will notice a military that says, see you, bye, let's get you out of here, right? That's the beauty of our democracy. We're not at the point where the military is going to suddenly take over. But we're at a point where we're very easily slipping down a path where we're giving up freedom. Which is why I want to talk about what's happening in California. I'm jumping a little here, but book again. That book, read if you want to read. Be ready. It's not a long book. It rips you apart. It's the kind of book everybody should read, to be honest. So, what's Monkey Arm saying? Economic anxiety blamed on a minority population based on propaganda from an autocratic demagogue. Sound familiar? Thanks, Monkey Arms. Making my point. I didn't see your comment before I said, I don't think that is what, I get where you're going, Monkey Arms, smart point, but I do not believe that's what Donald Trump is or did. I don't think 75 million Americans who voted for Trump are all a bunch of people who want to repress and suppress everybody else. I have to say, the left is more suppressive than the right now. You may not like what the right stands for. And economic nationalism is a weird thing, the way we've used it or not used it at different times in history. But Democrats are economic nationalists too. But the real danger to me is more in censoring thought. That is how fascists succeed. They censor thought. They ultimately censor action and thought. Those two things get censored in a totalitarian or fascist society. And that's what's scary. Economic freedom rarely leads to fascism. So you can hate on the right, but the right isn't out trying to censor thought or censor action the same way the left is. And unconsciously at some level, what this pandemic has led to is a censoring of action. The censoring of thought leads to people not being able to say things, not being able to think things, not being able to have certain opinions. I talked about Twitter saying they're going to censor people who have opposite views on the vaccine. Hello from Chicago, Bayern 16. Thanks for watching. It's a matter of I read what they're going to do. And they decided anything that they think spreads misinformation about the value of vaccines essentially will be censored. And they're overt about it. Okay. And they're saying they're going to move to even censoring opinions, which is what they're already doing. But now they're owning it. I want you to think about it for a second. I mean, whether you think the vaccine or anybody who says COVID isn't real. Okay. Again, I don't know who can say COVID isn't real. And yet I know some people do. COVID's real. COVID's definitely real. 300,000 people have died of COVID. It's real. Because you think we're not handling it the right way, or because you may be a person who argues it's as I have, it's dangerous, but I believe it's what we're doing to destroying the rest of society is more dangerous, given that 40% of people, possibly 50%, are asymptomatic, which means you'll get the virus and not know you have it. You won't get a little sick. You'll not get it all sick. Now, yes, that means you could spread it. But the point is, almost half of people who get it would not only be fine, they wouldn't even know they had it. Then a significant percentage, 80% of people who get it are basically okay. You may have some bad days. And about 20% are at risk. And that 20%, remember in the beginning, they said, that's why we're worried about overcrowding hospitals. And that was a legit thing to worry about. I'm going to come back to nationalist propaganda in a minute, Monkey Arms. Yes, nationalist propaganda, but bear with me for a second, Monkey Arms. Hear me out on this, okay? Because nationalist propaganda is what they used, what Hitler used and all that. And Trump may have used nationalist propaganda, but he didn't control the propaganda machine, Monkey Arms. That's the point. What I think a lot of people don't realize is just because Trump said things or said he would do things, which he rarely did. I'm going to tell the governors, and he never could do half of what he said he was going to do. I used to say to people, stop getting obsessed with, he can't do what he's going to say. It's like the Insurrection Act. He'd be the dumbest guy on the planet to declare the Insurrection Act because it'll ruin his chances for running again in 2024. So there ain't no way the military is going to step in and take martial law. It's not happening. So my point is, it's not about saying the propaganda, it's controlling the means of information through which propaganda gets spread. And right now, the means of information is being controlled by a certain group in the media and by a certain group of social platforms. And if that all shifts to the side where they're not willing to allow certain views or viewpoints out, whether that's pro-Trump, whether that's conservative, whether that's economic nationalism, whether that's saying, I don't think lockdowns work, whether that's saying, I don't think the vaccine is a good idea, whatever it is, if you stop allowing people to say and do things, if you can control that information, that's the real danger. It's the information itself isn't what's dangerous. It's the ability to control the means of that information and prevent people who have alternate views from sharing them and punishing people who share alternate views so they will stop sharing them. That's the real danger. It's not the propaganda. People get stuck in the propaganda. It's the control of the means of spreading that propaganda or stopping the spread of information. So going back to vaccines, you should be able to come out and have a dialogue about whether you think people should take this vaccine. It's a legitimate conversation to be having. It's not like you can't talk about it. Of course you should be able to talk about it. Well, what if people then decide not to take the vaccine? Then now the state is deciding, we think we know what's best for all of you. We're going to make you do this, and we're going to make you agree it's a good thing. And if someone's going to tell you it's not a good thing, we're going to silence them. I agree with you, Bayer, and I've said it from 100 years, and I'm not 100. The most powerful thing in a democracy is letting your opponents have a voice. Back in the day when the neo-Nazis were going to march in Skokie in like the 1980s, Skokie, Illinois, if you're too young to remember, it was a big deal. They were going to march. And the ACLU supported their right to march, not because they agreed with them. They were like, you're a bunch of white supremacist freaks. But they felt like the right to have that speech. And I've always argued, your right to speech is the most important thing. And let me tell you a quick story, guys. Before you think, if you think like some people like to think I'm on the right, and I think I'm pretty much in the center, but I'm independent. I'm a libertarian, I don't like government telling me what to do. But this is 12 years ago, over 10 years ago. I was sitting in a bar in Silver Lake, edge of, Hollywood. And there was a guy sitting there who was a total white supremacist. He had a swastika on his shirt. He was like, the whole deal. He was all out white supremacist. And he was sitting in this bar, Vietnamese bartender, people sitting in the bar. And he was talking to someone next to him, and he was spouting his white, nationalist, white supremacist BS propaganda. And I said something to him. I was like, you know what, dude? I was like, your views, your views are horrible. They're wrong. And you honestly, I just wish you weren't even in this restaurant, in this bar. Bayern, thank you. Grandfather fought for Germany in World War II. Wow. So that's an interesting one. Both fought for Germany. Interesting. Okay. I'm sticking with the end of this story. I literally wanted to get the guy out of the bar. This is how different times are. I wanted to censor him, but I was like, okay. I was like, you guys, we have a whole bar of people here. Let's ask him to leave. And I walked around. I said to the bartender, stop, you cannot serve someone. Don't serve him. You're Vietnamese. Like, don't serve the guy. He thinks you're an inferior human being. Just say no, cut him off, say my bar, out. I said to patrons, turn him. You don't have to throw him out. Just tell him to leave. Say, we all want you out. To a table, a couple guys. I was like, are you guys Jewish? They were like, yeah. I was like, okay, this guy's a white supremacist wearing a swastika. One of them had been served Vivette. I was like, let's get him out. Let's ask him to leave. Nobody would do a thing. Nobody. I was like, are you kidding me? I was literally on my feet trying to mobilize this whole bar to ask this guy to leave. Times have changed. And they wouldn't. And I went over to the bar, and the guy looked at me and laughed. And he said, how'd that work out for you? He's a big dude, too. So he could have decided to punch me, but he didn't. And he handed me a card and said, love to have a conversation with you about my views if you ever want to. I shook my head, took his card, never called him. But point is, one, he does have a right to have that viewpoint, and we have a right to shout it down. It sucked that those people in that bar wouldn't do that. Today, he'd be gone in a heartbeat. But what's scary is not that they wouldn't do it then, but that we've moved to the side now where we will literally censor you no matter what if you don't fit our main narrative. And that's terrifying, guys. It's really frightening if you think about it. Bayern, yeah, in Skokie during that moment, right? And it was intense when they came in. It was all over the national news. And you know what? They're beyond a minority. They're a tiny, tiny, tiny group. And we give white supremacy more power by silencing it. When you silence your opposition, you give them power. Let them talk, and let's talk louder, because their views will be diminished. But if you're afraid to let the other side speak, even if it's extreme, you're ultimately in trouble, because sooner or later someone will decide your views don't get heard. And if you allow the vehicles that control information to choose who they're going to censor, it's only a matter of time till somebody in control decides you should be the one that we censor. Just because you're on the left and that's what it is right now doesn't mean they won't turn on you. Every single totalitarian, authoritarian, fascist society has done that. They all turned on their own. You know, Cuba, you know, Che Guevara got turned on by Castro. You know, Mao turned on the people who started the revolution with him. Lenin, you know, Lenin and Stalin, Lenin and you know, Trotsky, you know, in Russia, they turned on, like, turned on Trotsky, like you got turned on. It always comes back and gets you. I agree the left isn't shutting down Fox and Newsmax. Don't have to wait for my answer for very long. It's not, you Monkey Arms, you're living in a different era. You're living in an era where the whole notion is just if you are jailed. We're not jailing people. There are countries that still jail you for dissent. I've argued we're one that is not that, and that's a good thing. But this is the whole point about the advanced information age, right? There are ways to censor people now that do not require you to lock them up. And the left isn't shutting down Fox, not at all. Fox gets the highest ratings, but it's not about that. That's one news outlet that reaches 1/2 of the population that watches it, which is why we're so divided. But if the other half, and if you watch Fox, by the way, watch Fox News. If you're a person on the center to left, watch Fox News during the day, not Sean Hannity. Fox News' news coverage is pretty objective. Read Fox News on the app. It's pretty objective. I even had a good friend of mine who's very liberal take the test, and he was like, you know what, you're right. I watched it during the day. You know, it's much more balanced than CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, much more balanced in their coverage. So it's not about whether they're shutting them down. It's about, and social media platforms are shutting down anybody who has a viewpoint that they decide they don't want out there. And they are literally owning that they're censoring it. If you do not think vaccinations are good and you make that argument, they will censor you as misinformation. They censored the Hunter Biden story. I've said this before. You know, in October 15th, the New York Times said that it was misinformation, Russian misinformation about Hunter Biden. Last week, they said the Hunter Biden scandal is going to hang over President Biden's, administration. Politico did the same thing. Washington Post all dismissed it. CNN, Jake Tapper called it too disgusting to talk about. Now, suddenly, it's a real deal. But the fact that the biggest issue I have is not even just that the media ignored it, which was bad, but the fact that Twitter shut down the New York Post account. Again, as I've said, the oldest newspaper in America, started by Alexander Hamilton, ran a story, which we now was true. We now know was true. But they weren't saying it was true. They were just saying it happened about the emails and his business partner. And they shut their account down for a month because they wouldn't take down the story that this had happened. That kind of control, the social media platforms have a level of control that is off the charts. I'm not keeping track of all your comments, guys, but so I'll try to catch up with some of them. So that level of control, Monkey Arms, and those of you out there watching, is what scares me. And you should be favoring them not doing it. We should be favoring a free discussion of ideas. Let's go to COVID for a second. Let's go to what's happening in California, okay? Yes, it's bad right now. You know, and everyone points out the ICU capacity and hospital beds and all that. Understandable reason for concern. Also keep in mind, don't buy the hype. I'm not saying it's not bad when your ICU beds are falling. But, you know, when you hear those numbers, look at the real numbers. Again, I'm not saying it's not bad or real. I'm just saying in most people's heads, that means, you know, tens of thousands of people must be in a hospital. There aren't that many ICU beds. I think California has a total, the whole state, I think, has a total of 10,000 ICU beds. And that includes like 3,000 that are sort of specialty ICU beds. So just again, and Northern California has like 30% capacity available. So again, everyone in an ICU bed, most people in the ICU beds right now are not COVID patients. There aren't that many ICU beds. So anybody who's in a life-threatening situation, heart attack, bad accident, whatever, needs to be in a shot, in a way that could, be life-threatening, is in an ICU bed. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying it's not like 20,000 people are in ICU beds in California, or 30,000 or 40,000. It's like 5,000. Not saying that's okay. I'm just saying a disease that half the population won't even get sick, 80% of the remaining will get mildly sick, 20% will need medical care. Everyone who dies of it will be older or have serious underlying conditions. Weighed against what we are now seeing in states that are shut down is massive devastation. Massive devastation. Lives being ruined. And you got the restaurateurs finally going, enough. Because outdoor dining is somehow more dangerous than doing anything else, than going outdoors doing something else, than going to Target. Going to Target, there's people everywhere, but outdoor dining, it gets you at outdoor dining. It gets you after 10 at a restaurant. I mean, come on. At some level, you guys got to know. I agree with you, Bayern. Bigots should have their freedom of speech, and we should ostracize them. But ostracizing someone doesn't mean not letting them have their speech. It means speaking louder. And that's my issue. I'm for everybody having their speech. Everybody. Not for censoring anybody, unless I'm okay with the idea that you go, well, if you are going to call on people to go out and kill people, harm people, that's fine. And that's what they're going to argue. They're saying, well, if you say vaccines or whatever aren't this or that or COVID, you're encouraging people to go out and get the virus. That's a stretch. You're simply challenging the notion of whether what's happening is working. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest it. I'm not saying masks aren't a good thing. I wear a mask when I'm around people and all that. But let's be honest. You put a mask on when you go in an ICU, right? A doctor or, in a hospital, right? The minute they touch that mask, the minute they're in an unsanitary, unsterilized environment, they throw it out and put a new one on. Our masks are so dirtied up and whatever. And again, masks will help you in close contact. But, I go to a gas station in California and I see people at 3 different pumps all wearing their mask. They're all by themselves outside, 15 feet away from anyone with a mask on. COVID ain't going to jump over the gas pump and get you in the breeze in 5 seconds. Just not. It's like we think the masks are hazmat suits. They're not. And if you were to challenge that, or just to argue whether a reasonable debate, that should happen. It should be allowed. Yeah, that's why they did it in Skokie Bay, and it had the largest Holocaust population in the world, Monkey Arms says, Joe Biden said the press is the enemy of the state. Has he also suggested we throw those right in jail? You're confusing private press for the state. No, I'm not, Monkey Arms. Appreciate the dialogue, though. I'm not. Joe Biden did not say the press is the enemy of the state. But I don't care that Trump called the press the enemy of the people. I mean, you can go, I wish he hadn't. Sure. To be honest, I don't care what Joe Biden says either. I don't care if Joe Biden can say whatever he wants. My concern isn't somebody saying something extreme. My concern isn't Trump saying the press is the enemy of the people. And it's stupid to say, but the reality is, in a different way, much of the press is becoming a disservice to the people because in not reporting things, in not being balanced, in not doing things fairly, in picking a side, in choosing selectively to eliminate information, they lose their credibility as objective conveyors of information. And people distrust the media on both sides. And that distrust creates a vacuum. And social platforms are being very clear in where they want to go. So again, I don't care what Joe Biden comes out and says. I care about whether the media, whether social platforms censor that. And I care the effect it has on us. Because right now, depending on where you live and what you watch, you have two totally different notions of what's going on in the world. Completely different notions of what the world looks like. It's like craziness. It's like parallel universes, depending on what media you watch. That's twisted. And again, you should be able to have the conversation. Should be able to have all-out dialogue about stuff. Trust me, Monkey Arms, and everybody who agrees with Monkey Arms, you look 5 years down the road, you are going to regret the censorship we're seeing. And I talk about the double standards, and it does bother me. Look at Andrew Cuomo, a credible accusation of sexual harassment for years from one of his top advisors, who's a progressive, gets zero coverage on CNN. MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, zero. Not even a mention. Not even a mention that she came out and said this. When and Tara Reid accused Joe Biden of inappropriate behavior, not a mention. But when Brett Kavanaugh was accused, it was nonstop news. So it is a double standard, and it does matter. It matters that when one side makes an allegation, I mean, it's a credible allegation that one of his top aides is saying this happened. Whether it's true or not, it's a credible allegation, and it should get reported by the mainstream press, and it should get looked into. He's being considered as Attorney General. If it was worth reporting on Kavanaugh, because he was going to be a Supreme Court justice, that someone literally out of the blue accused him of gang rapes with Michael Avenatti as their lawyer, who has since been proved to be a complete corrupt piece of crap, con man. CNN made him a media star. They ran those accusations. I'm not even talking about I'm not Blasey Ford's accusations, which are no more credible than the ones against Andrew Cuomo. I mean, she's an aide of his for 5 years, one of his top aides, high ranking in his administration. It deserves to get reported and investigated. That's all I'm saying. Come on. Monkey arms. I am going to blame the left for censorship because the left, this is one where I don't take the middle. The left is the one censoring. The right isn't censoring anybody. And it's not, you can be left or right and censor, I mean, in my view, most fascist and authoritarian regimes are more left than right. But they're right ones too, South America. It's not about whether you're right or left. It just happens that in America, the left is the side that's doing the censoring. The right isn't. The right is not censoring people. They're not stopping people from talking. So I will blame the left for censorship until you can show me that the right is censoring too. Till you can show me that the left isn't censoring. I just gave you a bunch of great examples of the left censoring. I just gave you a bunch of great ones, monkey arms. I mean, it is censoring. Hunter Biden was censored, blatantly censored by the left, by Twitter, by the mainstream media. Andrew Cuomo. Censorship is also just not saying things, but they're actively on social platforms shutting people down for having views, literally for having views. And, when Dorsey of Twitter and Zuckerberg of Facebook were asked in Congress both, who on the right have you censored? They couldn't think of a person. These two guys are geniuses. They're billionaire tech geniuses. They didn't have one name. They were like, well, we have. And they're like, who? They're like, well, we have to get back to you. You have to get back to us. They didn't have a name. They couldn't think of anyone. They're like, somebody find me someone on the right prominent that we censored. I mean, on the left prominent that we censored. They didn't have any because for the most part, they censor people on the right. And I don't care if you disagree with the right. Don't censor them. Okay, moving on. I want to get to this fear thing. Hey, Crafty, let's play that. Let's play this video. I did a video. I want to show you guys. Let's shift gears for a second. Hey, Crafty, good to see you. Like your office behind you. That's all fake, by the way. This is fake news here with Crafty. He's created a fake office with fake people. None of that's real, you guys. This misinformation. We should get censored right now, Crafty.
No. This is all real. I control them just like I control the media.
I'm going to set this video up. You guys, I was out on the street in LA and I talked to this guy's homeless. He's been parked outside this studio for months and months and months. And the woman who runs the studio actually at first hated that he was there and then got to know him and started to find out his nickname's Lucky, what Lucky was up to. And I talked to Lucky. And I want you it's a little hard to hear parts of it. I'll do some commentary over it where it's hard to hear, but I just want you to watch. This guy is out here on the street, homeless in California, and listen to his story. All right, hold on. We're live.
You're live. What's going on, Rob?
I'm in Santa Monica, and with my friend behind the camera, Marky Costello.
Hi.
She's awesome. Your name is John. John lives here on the street right here in that truck. Before you make judgments about John, you think, oh, this dude's just living like a homeless guy on the street. That's what you might think when you see John parked here with his truck and his thing. But John, you got a story, man. Yeah. Right? You work a job?
Yeah, I do DoorDash. I'm an artist.
And do you want to live here?
No, I do not want to live here. And actually, if I could, like I told you earlier, I would be driving up and down the coast, selling my art and helping.
What do you do to make a difference? He does DoorDash. He's telling us this guy's delivering DoorDash. Now listen, and he volunteers.
Clean your guys' building that I try to every night, meet them right here and take their bags because they're heavy. They're actually really heavy. Just so they don't have to open this up, and because we throw a lot of garbage here, just so that they don't have
He's
to.
like being a good neighbor. You think he's like a bum living on the street. He's being a good neighbor. And he's got a job, and he's trying to stay afloat. And what do you do for showers? He goes inside the bathroom, takes a shower in the bathroom. It sucks. It sucks to be doing what he's doing, but he's doing it. He's being friendly. He's good. He's clean as he can be.
Did he get any relief?
You get any help?
I do use EBT. I do use the EBT that they give us.
So he gets
And
some
then,
volunteer
there's a
aid, but
sister
listen to this.
that comes
He
along,
volunteers
she's
himself.
from a church of
She
Oklahoma
helps you
veteran, and we volunteer with her, and she helps bring food to
And you
all the.
volunteer?
Yeah.
What do you do volunteer?
Well, I just help pass out food.
Pass out food. So homeless guy, living, working a job, volunteering, having to take a shower in a bathroom, and this is Los Angeles. Mayor Garcetti, this is the best you can do while you've shut this entire city down, seriously? So everybody, when you see a guy like John on the street, before you judge and decide he's some loser sucking up space, which we might all be guilty of having thought, maybe you talk to them and realize who they really are and how hard they're trying to make ends meet in a really tough world with a government that's doing crap to help.
I appreciate that.
Thanks, man. Good luck to you.
All right, Lucky.
All right. All right.
got it.
So
Take
thanks,
care.
Crafty. So isn't that intense? We can cut it, Crafty. That's it. Isn't that intense? You know, seriously, Bruce, you watch that guy, right? He is homeless, living on the street in that crappy van. He volunteers. He takes showers. There's no shower. He takes showers in a bathroom that's got a sink. He does his best to be clean. He delivers DoorDash. Sidebar. So I've heard he sometimes takes some of the fries out of people's orders. Kind of like that. You know what? He's out there delivering in the pandemic. But, you know, and I thought about it. And I was like, no, Crafty, I thought about it. And you guys, I was like, seriously. Like, this is the times people are falling into. He doesn't want to live out there. He's like, I'm trying to do my best. And we're giving him no support. You know, meanwhile, the French Laundry restaurant in Northern California, where Gavin Newsom goes to have 400 per person dinners, got $2.5 million in PPP loans. $2.5 million. That should piss you guys off. All these big companies, all these big places got tons of money. It's a double standard. It's a total double standard. Crafty, I want to put a comment up here, okay?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks for joining, Crafty.
You got it.
I'm going to have you back on at the end for your final commentary with me.
You got it.
Monkey Arms, on it. I keep sticking on this because I think it's a valid point. So I'm happy to go back and forth with you. In Rob's World, I love that you call it Rob's World. That's fine. I'll call it Rob's World. Maybe I'll make my show Rob's World. Posting a story about microchips being in a vaccine deserves equal credit. Yes. 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 Monkey Arms. You get to post a story about whatever you want. That's the point. Don't tell me what I have to believe or not believe. If I want to post a story that says the world is flat, should it get censored because the world's not flat? And you're using an extreme example, but the censorship is leading to people coming to more extreme conspiracy-based theories. But the reality is there are many people posting things that aren't like microchips in vaccines. And by the way, how do you know they're not? I'm kind of kidding. But, you just assume what they tell you is true. I mean, healthy skepticism. Yes, put the extreme skeptics out there. Let us discredit them. But in between them and the version you're supposed to say are plenty of people who are going to argue, Gavin Newsom's kids supposedly aren't vaccinated. So go figure. Not everybody wants to vaccinate. It's one tiny example, but views that aren't fitting the mainstream narrative that one side has decided or one set of leaders has decided should be out there, even the extreme ones. But in between those extreme ones are more moderate ones that still don't fit the narrative, that are still valid challenges. I have challenged lockdowns. That is not craziness. Outdoor dining bans. There is no scientific evidence that outdoor dining leads to massive transmission. There's huge evidence that protests do. That got almost no coverage. Thousands of people coming from thousands of different homes, all spitting and yelling and screaming, masks or no masks, and going back to their homes. Massive spreader events. There's no evidence that outdoor dining does it. There is none. And they all know it. And my question is, why are more restaurants not just literally going, we are done with this? I'm surprised in California, literally every restaurant is like, we are open. Shut us down. Shut us all down. We dare you. The sheriffs of every major county in California, well, Southern California, have said, we will not enforce these things. They are BS. So now the sheriffs, should we censor the sheriffs for saying it's BS? They're going, it's dictatorial. It's not right. There's no evidence. We won't enforce this stuff. So if I'm a restaurant in California, why the heck aren't you just all opening up en masse, being like, you know what? This is where people got to get off their butts and go, enough. I'm going to open my outdoor dining. It's like a guy said today, we've done everything they asked. We followed every protocol. We did everything right. We used every safety precaution. And now you're closing our outdoor dining and we spent money. Let us have it. We need to stay afloat. We can't afford to sink. We all die then. And this is where I go, is fear worse than the virus? Is the cure worse than the virus? And that's a legit question too, Monkey Arms. It's not crazy science. It's not making something up to question whether it's working. Clearly, the lockdowns don't seem to be stopping the spread. As I've said before, it's comparable in other states where they're not locked down. There's an argument that people being locked down spread it because it's spreading within households. But either way, the outdoor dining thing, at a certain point, the numbers alone are showing that you are causing more damage to more people across a broader social, economic, and age demographic than you are from the virus, which unfortunately, yes, kills older and sick people, but predominantly older. That's not good. That's not okay. But there's an argument to be made, and we should have the arguments. All I'm saying, Monkey Arms. I'm not allowed to do it, Monkey Arms. That's the point. I've had my own stream censored on Reddit for questioning things. And I'm not huge like some people.
Multiple times.
I'll get shut down. I didn't hear you, Crafty.
We've been censored multiple times.
We've been censored multiple times. We have, Monkey Arms. And Crafty doesn't lie. He's a truth teller. No, we've been censored. But again, I'm not allowed to, and that's my point. Twitter's not even hiding anymore that they're going to say, if you say certain things, we will take them down. If you question vaccines, we have the right to censor you. Why? People have questioned vaccines forever. And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I'm not even taking a side. And I go back to say, I don't care what Joe Biden says. He can say whatever he wants. I'm for everybody getting to say what they want. And let us be smart enough to decide what we think, what we believe, what makes sense to us. Fear. I want to go back to fear. And the double standard stuff, I could just go on and on. Again, I hate when there's a double standard, when it doesn't get covered. That's what bothers me. I'm not saying the left, mainstream media on the left, is censoring. The mainstream media on the left is choosing to not cover things evenly. I think that creates enormous distrust. Social platforms are censoring. And by omitting information when you claim to be unbiased, you are in a form of sort of passive censorship. But at the end of the day, we're getting people bought into it. And this is where I come back to fear. I come back to fear, you guys. So I want to come back as we kind of get to the end of this to the fear argument. I just want you all to think about it. Just put your politics aside for a second. When is fear worse than the actual thing? I go back to 1944. My dad, the Battle of the Bulge. I said these guys just kind of ran through it. They were afraid, but they had no choice. They just were like, we're going to do what we got to do. And that's why they called them the Greatest Generation, because they came out with this such positive ad. My dad was happy. He was like, I got a shot. I got a bill, the GI Bill. They gave me free college. They gave you free college. You went and put your life on the line and watched everybody die. They better give you free college. Now people would be like, you owe it to me. I woke up this morning, give me free college. Wipe my student loan debt away. Although part of me would like that because I have a lot of student loan debt, but I get it. Mike Rowe from, World's Toughest Jobs or whatever, dirtiest, hardest, deadliest, saying, it's your burden, it's your fault. You did it. It's your debt. Pay it. It's an argument, I don't know that we should forgive student loan debt, but my point is, at what point are you living in too much fear? It's a personal question you got to ask yourself, The argument that you are somehow going to hurt everybody else is getting a little thin, right? Because the truth is we could quarantine the most vulnerable populations. We could protect them. We could spend a fortune to protect the most vulnerable. We could give them everything they want and keep them safe. And the truth is that so many deaths occurred in compounded areas like nursing homes. And the truth is that every controlled study where they had masses of people, like in prisons, on cruise ships, where there was a widespread infection and they couldn't get out, found that 40 to 50%, in some cases 70% were asymptomatic. So most people were okay. And we're seeing a slight form of herd immunity in places like Florida that are open, or Georgia. Can't explain why I'm not a scientist. I can tell you it's happening. But what I'm saying is, when is the fear worse? When are you so afraid that you're so afraid that that's going, and again, when do you decide I've got to have my life back? Are you comfortable because the government's giving you money? You're able to stay home? You're fine? Maybe you are. What about all the people who aren't? What about all the people who can't afford not to work? Millions and millions of people are behind in rent and can't make it up. They said you can have a rent moratorium, but you got to pay it back, and they didn't do anything to the land owners. So they got to pay their mortgage. So they're not going to let you not pay it. They don't wipe the slate clean. How are you going to make that up if you don't make a lot of money? How are you going to feed your family? How are you going to feed yourself? How are you not going to end up like Lucky, homeless? And what about all the kids? The social trauma, seriously, of them having no social interaction, and they're all terrified. Kids are like getting terrified, and they see people in the mask, and they're all scared. Wow, we're raising a whole generation of people to be terrified. This is worth being afraid of, yes. It's worth being cautious about, yes. I'm not saying ignore it. But when has your fear gotten too large? When is your fear larger? And monkey arms, the fact that I'm not being censored right now doesn't mean anything. Because I've been censored, and I'll be censored again. And sooner or later, you'll be censored. If you, monkey arms, just go and look. The censorship's happening. They're not even hiding it anymore. And people are now afraid of being censored. So they're afraid to say it. So that's how censorship works. And this is where I started it on this topic. It's not what people say that scares me. It's whether you let them say it, and the people who control the means to say it. And if they don't let you say it, and if they start controlling what you can say, that's what should scare you. Not the propaganda, the means to control propaganda or information, not propaganda or propaganda. All I'm saying, everybody, is we all need to think hard. I have lived with lots of fear. We all do. Fear is deadly. And this virus has brought out fear. And Trump, I'll throw it to you guys on the left. Trump was a fear monger. I'm not defending that. He got people scared. Somebody with monkey arms early on said, hey, stirring people's fear up. Yes, I'm not a fan of that. He has a right to say it. I'm not a fan of driving people through fear. I don't think it works. And notice I'm not trying to drive fear here. The fact that I say something bad could happen isn't based out of fear. It's based out of concern of what I see going down. And I don't want that to continue. But I think the opposite. I think we need to live in the face of all of this stuff and try to step over our fear. And right now I feel like fear is winning. Fear is winning everywhere. Fear is winning in our social discourse. Fear is winning in our politics. Fear is winning with this pandemic. Absolutely. Not everywhere. Not in Florida where I've been. It's not. And people are functioning left and right. Democrats, Republicans, black, white, rich and poor. They're all finding a way to function. They're not all living in fear. I'm in California right now and I see the fear. I see the fear in people's eyes, guys. And that alone can be too much. And at a certain point now, people are afraid they're never going to make it back and they're never going to come out of it. So to some point, this is on people to stand up and yeah, Garcetti, we're waiting. Come on. But Eric Garcetti is not living in fear because Eric Garcetti's fine. And that's my point. Gavin Newsom, Eric Garcetti, the mayors of all these big cities, and President Trump. I hated when he came out after COVID and was like, see, it's easy. It's like, no, it's not easy. You had the best medical treatment. You got on a helicopter. Of course it was easy for you. And you're old and obese. So yeah, you needed that. So it's not that it's easy, And I'm not saying it should be. Okay. Yeah, I hear you. By the way.
No, he's just being ridiculous.
I'm glad for the squad. I'm glad. Let's pull it down. That comment down. No, it's fine. You leave it up. Take it down. No, I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. I am glad for the squad. You know, I really am. And when people talk about AOC saying she wants new leadership, I don't know if you saw that. She wants, Schumer, the head of the Senate, Nancy Pelosi, all these guys. She's like, step aside. You guys are old school. You're bad. You're tired. I actually agree. And Mitch McConnell, too. I think all these guys have been in power for 100 years, and they're the establishment, and they don't help any of us. They don't really care about the American people. I believe AOC cares more about the American people than Nancy Pelosi ever will. And probably than Trump, because I'm not sure how much Trump really cared about people. He cares about himself. I think he did some things that were good for people, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he cared. At the end of the day, I'd rather that, but I don't see what Nancy Pelosi's doing that's great for people. But either way, left, right, all of them, go. They're all old and tired. Bring in fresh, new. I liked it that she was a bartender, AOC, and came in. I want literally 500 citizen legislatures in Congress from all walks, from all political persuasions, perspectives, angles. Get in there, real people. And let's fix this country for all of us. That's what unity will look like. Not just everybody jump on our side now and we'll silence you if you don't. That's what unity will be. It'll be a coming together. The Stand is coming out. I think it starts tomorrow. Stephen King, the reboot of The Stand, Stephen King, pandemic. But it's not about the pandemic, right? It's about the handful that survive. And does it matter who you are and if you're good or bad and how you fit in? It's sort of like that human fable. Powerful when he wrote it. Can't wait to see it. Thank you guys for being part of my show tonight. Appreciate you all. Appreciate the dialogue. Appreciate the back and forth, guys. You're right. I'm not being censored right now, and I love it. So let's keep having these conversations. Thanks for watching. It's Rob Nelson Live.